Hey friends, welcome back to the workshop on the mother wound. This is the one based off of Discovering the Inner Mother by Bethany Webster. I just stopped and started fresh because the last, when I started it a second ago, it was so hot because I turned off the fans. And I am just going to let the noise be not as good because I feel like one of the biggest lies of the patriarchy is that we need to be perfect, in particular, those identifying or assigned to be female need to have this perfection issue happening. And I am actively about saying no, thank you to that. So we're going to have the fan on and hopefully you can hear me and we will just go from there. So, friends, I got totally ready for and prepped for culture, even though I had already done culture. I need one more scrap of pattern. 1 second. I'm just going to grab some more fabric. Yeah, I got totally prepped for culture and then realized I had already done culture, which is great because it's another example of just like we're just all here doing whatever we can figure out, and it's not going to be perfect. And maybe the fact that I like was still processing culture makes sense because the weight of patriarchy on us, it's so intense, it's so major, and it's just like every time you think maybe you've like gotten to a little bit like of a point where like, all right, this is what it's about. It's impacting another thing. So listen, this is flustery for me because this is such a big deal. And it affects so much of our life. So let's all take a deep breath together. If you've been avoiding this, I am with you. I have been avoiding it too. Um, Please remember, I am not a mental health professional. Get counseling, talk to other people, reach out for support, journal, meditate, use Insight Timer, which is a free meditation app that I love. Listen to people like Lisa A. Romano, Bethany Webster, other people that you trust. Seek out support as much as you can because you deserve it. And this stuff is really hard to process, and it's made to feel isolating because what happens when a group of oppressed people don't talk to each other? They're easier to oppress, right? Just bottom line. So talk to each other, share your experiences, reach out to us on YouTube community. There's such nice people that write comments and things on my YouTube videos. So let's keep talking because this stuff is really heavy, and we have great resources in each other. Okay, so get your cozy stuff together, get your comfy clothes on. I was like gonna put a nicer shirt on and like not wear a backwards hat, but then I was like, you know what? This is about saying like we don't need to do this charade anymore. We do not need to be these perfection bots acting like a piece of clothing, like a piece of fabric that's randomly on our body in a different shape or form means anything. Doesn't that just sound silly? It does not mean anything. Okay, let's see if I can turn that into a heart. All right, so next up is, where do I want to put this? Next up is spirituality and how their mother wound has impacted our spirituality. This one is so significant for me, especially in light of like watching the documentary on the Duggar family this past month, which has been so intense for me. Because it just hit so close to home. And really realizing how huge of an impact my indoctrination into the super patriarchal evangelical Christianity has affected me on so many levels. Okay, this is hard to pin for some reason. Let's go, friends. Come on. I want this one to be under this one. So major, most specifically, this idea of the, I kind of want this guy on here. The umbrella of authority. Maybe I want this down here. Do you remember me talking about that umbrella of authority that was taught through those Duggar folks program? And that was really a lot of what I absorbed too in my Christian upbringing. And it's this idea that we are, so that there's this one umbrella and it's God and it covers everybody. And then under it is like, so there's one umbrella that's God, under it is a little bit smaller umbrella, and that's the man. And then under it is a little smaller umbrella, and that's the woman. And under that is the children. So that the mom is above the children, the dad is above the mom and the children, and God is above the man and the mom and the children. And how that affected me was that I really felt like, as an assigned female at birth child who was going to become what I thought was going to be just a wife and mom, I thought that I was never going to have a direct relationship with God, that only the man was. And so that felt really heartbreaking to me, because we were taught that, like, God was supposed to love us so much, and that if God never wanted to have a relationship with me, I just always felt like I was going to be like, I don't know, like it wasn't real, and that was the thing that was so sad for me even when I left Christianity, because I felt like I had at least had some sort of relationship with God, and I really loved that idea. And to lose that felt so heartbreaking. And I really felt that, it was this thing about me being queer that was separating me from God. And I have since always said, I think the greatest act of violence that we can do as a culture and a world, and religions, is to tell people that they are separated from God because of something that they can't change, and to do that just feels like the greatest form of violence, because whether we are religious or not, I do think we all really want meaning in our life. And when we're told that we can't have that meaning because of something that we can't change about ourselves, it just feels really cruel. And yeah, so the spiritual part, understanding that patriarchy, most of the religions we've been exposed to operate under this system of patriarchy, and that patriarchy says you can't have access to divinity if you're assigned female at birth or if you're queer. And so what we're doing by reinforcing and participating with patriarchy is we're reinforcing this separation from all these humans from divinity, from access to divinity. And why do we need access to divinity? Well, I mean, coming through 12-step programs, it really, you know, one of the things that's most effective that most people actually resist in 12 steps program is that idea of a higher power. Because on one hand, so many of us have been harmed by these ideas of higher power, by these patriarchal religions. But on the other hand, many of us know that without this idea of a higher power, without this, oops, hold on. Guy just got yanked out. Where were you? We'll slow these down and then put that on top. Without this idea that we're supported and loved and that we can ask for help and that we can have, you know, values that guide us and not just our own like self-serving what will make me happy or what will make the people around me happy. If we have these it's like I pinned in this thread, hold on. If we have this higher power that is there as a source of support and guidance, it's a lot easier to make decisions that are not just based in what's going to serve my immediate happiness and what's going to make someone around me happy. I think that both narcissism and codependency can be boiled down to a lack of faith, right? Because if I need to be the greatest and have everybody serve me, then I probably don't believe in a higher power or in the collective, right? I'm like totally dismissing the value in others and therefore in myself, because I don't think other people are valuable, then how could I truly believe that I'm valuable, right? And then the other side of the, codependency dyad with there's narcissists and then there's codependents, and codependents are like super not acknowledging the value in themselves and then in overvaluing other people, they're again devaluing everybody. So I feel a little scattered on this topic, people, but maybe that's okay, right? I'm not here because I'm like a guru or claiming to be some sort of spiritual scholar. I'm just here to say this is hard. Like, spirituality is really important to me because I need that idea that there's something bigger than me, that something matters, that it's like worth it. And without it, I get so discouraged. Like, even when I really do believe that, like, I've been discouraged lately about my kid and my kid, like the other kids that are in our neighborhood and at my kid's school. They're like so violent, so mean, so harsh with each other. And it breaks my heart. And I can't figure out how to make them stop because the truth is, I can't make them stop. Hold on. This is like totally. Yeah. And I guess that's what the serenity prayer is, right? Realizing that, like, I'm just going to take these stitches out and redo it because I can't get that through. Realizing that I can't control these kids. I was at my kids' field trip yesterday and, today, this morning. It's been a long day. And these kids were being non-stop aggressive and pushing each other and saying rude things to each other and saying awful things to the other kids. And it was so intense. And I was just telling them over and over and over, stop it, stop it, stop it, don't, that's not nice, and it was not making a difference. They were just completely irritated with me. And I was having the thought the whole time, like, I'm probably making it worse for my kid because now the mean kids are hating me and maybe they'll take it out on my kid. like, how do I tolerate this? And just like, I can't just not do anything. And then yesterday there was a kid who was being so mean to all the other kids in our neighborhood. And I told him he couldn't play in our back area. And the other kids were like, it was kind of mean. And I was like, he was being awful to you. And like, letting other people be mean to us is not helpful. And that is the note that I took for today to come back to, is that like, yes, we have been all given this job as emotional laborers under patriarchy, right? And yes, we want to like help people. Most of us, we really care about being caregivers. A lot of us, we love taking care of our kids. We love taking care of our partners or community members, right? There is a part of that that is good. But when it goes too far, when that compassion turns to like just like supporting people who are actually harming, that's not compassionate. And that is what let me just get us to this page. I really like how she lays this out, because this is something that maybe I did mention it in the last one, but this is something that I wrote a book about, that like, yes, we want to be compassionate. Yes, we want to understand that like people who are lashing out have been hurt and that's why they're doing it. Like, yes, hurt people, but we don't help anyone by not having anything to say when somebody is harmed, right? Like, I'm really into having compassion. I'm really into like the teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh, no man, no lotus, and like remembering what, like seeing each person as they were when they were 5 years old, and seeing their absolute innocence, and understanding, like Byron Katie says, that there is how does she say it, I forget the exact wording, but it's basically like, if someone is hurting you, they must be confused. Like, nobody who is in like a truly good soul space could hurt anybody, because that just doesn't make sense. And so understanding that if anyone's hurting you, like it's not like their right mind. But at the same time, when we don't let them learn the lessons that are for them in that moment, this is what my book concept was about, is that we don't let them access what will become the compost, which will allow them to grow. So the analogy is that like in a lotus pond, there's all this like mud and like dead bugs and all this stuff. And like through the water pressure and the sunlight, that stuff turns into nutrients that feeds the lotus flower. And so my addition to that is that, okay, if somebody else has all this dead bugs and muck and things, and they're so freaked out in their own pain that they're throwing their shit at me, and I take it, then their shit doesn't have the time to, through that pressure of life, through that sunshine of love of other people and their higher power, turn into nutritious compost that will allow them to grow. If I take it and I don't put up some boundaries saying like, nope, that is your dead, gross muck to deal with, and you might not choose to compost it, right? You might not put it under the pressure and the sunlight of spiritual practice and growth, but that's not my business. I can't give that to you. What I can make sure to do is not take the raw material away from you, because then for sure you won't have the opportunity. And I really like it how Bethany Webster puts it. So she talks about when we, like, one of the biggest things we can do to take away our contribution to patriarchy. So like the thing we can do to make sure that we're not upholding patriarchy is to become true individuals. And so she says, traditionally, women have been taught that it's noble to carry other people's pain, that emotional caretaking is our duty, and that we should feel guilty if we deviate from this function. In this context, guilt is not about conscience, but about control. Boy, have I felt that in my own life. Guilt has definitely been a way that others and belief systems have controlled me, right? So, this guilt keeps us enmeshed with our mothers and whoever relationship, bosses, partners, children, depleting ourselves and ignorant of our power. We must see that there's no true cause for guilt. This role of emotional caretaker was never a true role for us. It was simply a part of our legacy of oppression. Seen in this way, we can cease allowing guilt to control us. So that's the like, okay, this is not actually my shit. And then the next part is really powerful. Refraining from emotional caretaking and letting people have their lessons is a form of respect for self and other. So this was the thing I realized. It's like, it's actually much kinder to say no to people when they're throwing their shit at me than it is to just let them keep doing it. So our over-functioning contributes to the imbalance in our society and actively disempowers others by keeping them from their own transformation. We must stop carrying the load for other people. We do this by seeing the sheer futility of it. We must refuse to be the emotional custodian and dumping ground for those who neglect to do the work necessary for their own transformations. And then she goes on to talk about how, like, we are not actually here to heal our whole families, that is each and every individual's work. And so I really appreciate this, and why I wrote a whole book about it is because I really did think that it was like loving and kind and generous to just be like, oh, they've been through so much, that's why they're being mean, and I just need to be kind and I'll like love them into healing. But the thing is, you can't love somebody into healing. They have to be ready, right? I'm not going to heal until I'm ready, no matter how much somebody loves me. And if I'm getting away with throwing my shit at other people, that's going to be reinforcing, because it's really hard to do this work, you know. Probably why I've been avoiding. I mean, I haven't totally been avoiding making this. Like I said, I've been working on another project, but in a way I have been avoiding it because it is painful. It's hard to be like, oh shit, this whole system, all of this guilt, and all of the ways that I was trying to feel good about myself are based off of a system that was purposefully trying to oppress me. That's not fun. So all of that to say, friends, if you're feeling like this is heavy, it is. Consider getting some therapy, right? Consider reaching out to support groups. I just read this sweet book that was about a family from originally who immigrated to the US from India, and the mom ended up starting this group called Chats Over Chai. I don't have the book anymore, but I should mention the author. Let's just look it up real quick so that I don't feel like I am not acknowledging them. I think they wrote a book, like Well-Behaved Indian Women or something like that. Well-Behaved. Yeah. Okay. Well-Behaved Indian Woman by Somaya Davy, Saumya, and then last name Dave. And then the book that I read is called What a Happy Family. And so it was about this family and like all the pressures that they put on each other as women, particularly. And so their mom started this thing called Chats Over Chai, which I feel like is very much similar to what we are doing here and on my YouTube channel. It's just like talking about these things and just saying like, we may not have all the answers, but it's a great start to just start thinking and talking about them and giving yourself some time. And that's what, the slow stitching can be nice, because if you think about it, like when I'm not doing slow stitching, I'm either, or some other kind of art, which because I also like to paint. When I'm not painting or sewing or reading, I'm either zoning out, watching television, or avoiding my thoughts by doing chores or cooking, cleaning, running around, doing errands, getting stuff for my kid, right? And so it's very hard for me to give myself the time. I journal most days, but it's hard for me to give myself the time to really dig into this stuff and be like, okay, what is this about? Like, what is this patriarchy thing? How has it been affecting my life? What is grief? How is grief? Like, what do I need to grieve? So yeah, just know that this stuff, um, it really affects us a lot, and it deserves attention. And especially spiritually, like what are some ways that you can connect spiritually? If you've been harmed by a religious institution, one of the things that I'm interested in is sort of going back through some of those traditions and finding things that I did connect with, and not letting that negative experience take everything away from me. So, for example, I really like the idea of prayer. I like praying for other people. And sometimes on walks, I'll just think of everybody in my life and just hope that they're well, send them some love, and pray for them in whatever way feels right to me. I also really um, like scripture. I don't necessarily read it every day, but there are some things that are encouraging to me, that I'll read. I've thought about that. I'd like to take another look at the teachings of Jesus, because I actually like really admired Jesus and a lot of his teachings, even though I don't like what Christianity has done with a lot of them. I used to journal like, dear Jesus. I felt really close to Jesus. And so now I sometimes do journal in that sort of way, like just sort of dear anybody who wants to support me, guides, spirits, angels, ancestors. Uh, I will tell you one thing spiritually that I really miss is singing in groups. I loved that as a part of Christianity, and it's a longer story than makes sense to share here, but I did convert to Judaism. And that has been helpful in terms of healing things spiritually for me. But lately, there's been some hard things even there with the patriarchy that's still really embedded in Judaism. So kind of been taking a break from organized Judaism as well, which is sad because I miss the singing and the community. But yeah, what things do you experience as spiritual? A lot of people experience nature as spiritual. And I will say that about 2 years ago, I started walking every day, and I do consider that like a spiritual time for me. And I listen to spiritual talks or podcasts while I walk, and I just love, being out there. It feels really valuable to me. So let's take a moment and just think about like, what is spirituality mean to you? Like, in what ways have you been affected by this patriarchal notion that like your role is just to serve and caregive? And how has that like impacted your ability to see yourself as an individual, like, excuse me, in your divinity and worthy of a direct connection with a higher power? So let's just take a few minutes for that. And I really understand, and I went through my own phase of being like, I can't do anything spiritual because it just felt too painful. Um, so I really respect that. So if there's not something, like, even if the words spiritual just feel like too hard for you, what are ways that you can even just connect with? I feel like values are a really nice way for me to reconnect spiritually, because it acknowledges like, if I have values, then that means I think this life is meaningful, that I think it's more than just a random chaos, right? If I want to live thinking that our life is of value, that other people are of value, that there's meaning, then it probably means that I have a spirituality, right? And spirituality doesn't mean anything to do with God. Some spirituality does, but excuse me, spirituality for me just means that we acknowledge that like we have a spirit, that there's something beyond what we can see, and that we want to acknowledge it in the way that we live. And so, what are some ways that you can acknowledge that part of yourself that feel affirming to you, that don't come into that like guilt piece? I love how she put like all the guilt that's related to patriarchy. It's not real. It's been made up, it's been manufactured to control us. And so, wow, this is really knotted, folks. Let's see if I can get it out. Which, in a lot of ways, this knot here is a great analogy for how my spirituality felt. when I was the 10 years when I was just like, I really feel like it was like my wandering the desert. I was like, what is going on? And I didn't even come out of Christianity primarily because of being queer. It was because I went through this awful missions experience where I realized like they were literally controlling us and like harming us by saying God was having them do it, and they were directly contradicting the Bible, and it was so abusive. And I was like, no, thank you. And I had never been a fan of telling other people that their lives were wrong. Um, and so the queer thing was just like, and this doesn't happen to work. But I would have left Christianity even so. And for so long, I was just like in this total knot of like, what does life even mean then if I don't have this? And can I still want to be a nice person? You know, when I first moved here to Massachusetts, I was like trying to be okay with my own queer identity, but all these queer people I met, you know, I was still deeply homophobic and felt like they were like so wild and worldly. But it's like there's just as much as there's wild and worldly, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's for every wild and worldly queer person, there's a person like me who just wants to like bake banana bread and do sewing projects and read my kids' storybooks, you know? And I might not look the way somebody who likes to do all those things is supposed to look, but that's still what I enjoy. That's still a huge part of who I am, you know? And just because I'm queer doesn't mean I don't want those things too. I feel like I'm like, you know, would have made like a great Duggar family, except for the fact that I am queer and think all people matter. So, yeah, yeah. So, what are the, you know, I think values is a great place to start because I was really able to say, like, hey, I still have a lot of values. Like, I still really care about everyone being treated well. I think everybody is divine and precious. And I still really believe that, you know, the least of these is who we should be caring for. That my life is not about accumulating power and wealth and successes, that my life is about um, being a part of a bigger community and showing up for that community in whatever way I can. I believe in generosity. I believe in kindness. I believe in honesty, you know, and yeah, I learned about those things through Christianity, but Christianity doesn't have, you know what, friends? Side note, I did both blue on the top and I did yellow down here, and I meant to do yellow down here, and wah, wah. That's all right. It is what it is. So yeah, I believe in these values, even and like yes, they were taught to me in Christianity, but they're not from Christianity. Like kindness and generosity and um love and service and um honesty and patience, those things are universal, and I can live my life according to those values, and that can give me meaning. And what I think is really great is that like once I'm disentangling myself from this patriarchy, I can start to see that like, yes, I want to be loving and kind and patient to everybody else, but also to myself, right? That doing all of those things for other people doesn't make sense if I'm not doing it for myself. So I'd say, you know, at this point, my main spirituality is my values. And I love that DBT really helped me reclaim that. I know I've mentioned that and other things before, the dialectical behavioral therapy. But their little motto is like how to live a life worth living. And I think that well, I know that they helped us to understand that, like, if we have values and we get stuck in a point of feeling like really depressed or really scared or really anxious or really anything, even if it's, greedy, then we can come back to our values, and we can use our values as almost like a higher power, right? Because we can be guided by them and make decisions according to them to support ourselves, because we know that's the that's the commitment we've made to ourselves. So maybe let's say, like, I really value um honesty, and I'm tempted with my ex due to a situation to like kind of stretch the truth, which is something I'm tempted to do every day because it sometimes it seems like an easier route. I can remind myself, like, okay, this makes sense that you're wanting to try to manipulate this situation because honesty is scary and requires more courage and might not give you as good of results. But you have made a decision that your long-term goal is to be honest in every interaction. And so we're going to make sure that this short-term behavior aligns with your long-term goal, right? And, I have another long-term goal of recognizing that I am a human and that I am here to human. I am not here to be Jesus. I had a therapist once who said, like, who are you measuring yourself against? Like, whose behavior are you trying to uh like measure up, like what is a good person? And I was like, Jesus, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Mandela. They were like, so there has only been just a few of those for a reason, because it's really not very realistic. And they told me that Martin Luther King and Mandela both like had affairs. And that was like, okay. And there's also, did you know, I hate to crush this for anybody, but there's actually like quite a bit of scandal around Mother Teresa and like what she did with all that money. So the message is nobody's perfect. And if you're trying to be perfect, the perfection is not a value. Perfection is a lie that is supports patriarchy. Okay. So yeah, what are your spiritual things? Is values a place where you could um have like a place for your spirituality to kind of live? Is nature something that feels really powerful spiritually for you? Um, for some people, like I think my grandma, like acts of service was her spirituality. Um, she loved making people food. She loved, I think I mentioned before, she was a part of a quilting group and they donated quilts to people. Um, is just conversational prayer with whatever, your guides, a God, if that feels right to you. Is meditation a spiritual practice that feels good to you? Sewing meditation, just thinking about things as you sew. So let's take another quiet moment. And then I think we'll wrap up for today. My throat's getting a little scratchy. And, sometimes when I'm just quietly stitching, no thoughts come to mind. And I feel like I should be like thinking something profound. But if you just sit and don't think, I think that's actually beautiful. That's like 100% of what the goal of Buddhism is to have no thought. So I think that's great. And if you're just thinking like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I think I'm not sewing right, or I blah blah, whatever you're thinking, fine, fine. Just let whatever happens happen. Okay, dear friends, I love you so much. Please reach out and get some support wherever you are. Even if you don't feel like you have any real people who you feel like you can talk to, consider lighting a candle, taking a moment and just asking your ancestors and spirits and angels if they would give you a hug. Okay. Consider writing in your journal and talking to your inner child or to your guides or ancestors or spirits. Consider reading a book and feeling some friendship with the characters. Okay. An animal, even going outside and just saying hi to a squirrel or to a bird. But just remember that you're not alone. Okay. And come on over to YouTube and say hi to me. And I will be so happy to say hi back. Okay. Love you all very much. I want you to be gentle with yourself as you process all of this. It's kind of a bummer, right? But this is what this painting is. It's the person giving themselves a hug. Okay. So let's all give ourselves a little hug or a big one. I love you, love you, love you. That's what my Aunt Linda used to always say, 3 I love yous. And come back together. To do the 4th part, which is the planetary mother wound. Okay. See you soon. Take such good care of yourself.